Hi, friends. Welcome. I'm Miss Lisa, and we are going to be talking to you about some picture books today. My friend is with me.
I am Miss Julie from the Byron Township branch, and I'm ready to start. How about you, Miss Lisa?
Yes, I think you should get started.
Okay, the first book that I'm going to share with you today is called Blue Floats Away. It was written by Travis Yonker and illustrated by Grant Snyder. Blue Floats Away is a story of a little iceberg who starts out the story attached to his parents. So he doesn't go anywhere without them. I'm trying to tip it. Doesn't go anywhere without them. And Blue starts to melt a little bit. So he gets separated from his parents and he starts to float away. And he's very anxious and nervous. He's never been away from them before and he doesn't know what to expect. But as he starts to float through the ocean, he starts to see wondrous things that he never saw when he was attached to his parents before. So it's a lovely story of bravery and friendship, but it's also as Blue starts to float away, he's an iceberg in the ocean. What do you think happens? That's right, he starts to melt a little bit. So our older readers will also appreciate the fact that Blue Floats Away is also a story of, of the water cycle. So Blue Floats Away.
Sounds great. I'm going to keep us with a little bit of nature here with Out of Nowhere. So, this book, written and illustrated by Chris Naylor Ballesteros, we meet a beetle, and out of nowhere one day, a caterpillar arrives to have a little tea with the beetle. They become great friends until one day the caterpillar doesn't show up. For anyone that knows what happens to caterpillars as their life, as they move about their life, they spin and form into a chrysalis. Well, our beetle didn't know this and sets off into the wild world to find where his friend has gone. Is his friend still there? Maybe his friend's changed. Check Out of Nowhere to find out. This is a beautiful, large book. It's almost all black and white with just a little bit of red here and there.
That is a fun one. I like that one too. Okay, so next I have a beautiful book called A Song of Frutas, written by Margarita Engel and illustrated by Sarah Palacios. They both won a Pura Belpré honor uh, for some of their other books. That's a children's book award for Latino authors. This is a story of a girl who lives in the United States, but she goes to Cuba to visit her grandparents. And her grandfather, as you can see on the picture here, her grandfather sells fruit in the marketplace. So she goes with him to sell his fruit in the marketplace. And the whole thing is like this big party in the community. The whole story just feels like this big celebration as the vendors, they call them los pregoneros. The vendors, these are singing vendors that go through the marketplace selling all their like household goods and their birds and all their yummy vegetables and tamales and roasted nuts, all kinds of wonderful things. It's just this fun celebration. But there's also kind of that little sadness because she doesn't get to see her grandparents all the time because she lives in the United States and they're in Cuba. There was a time in which the two people from the two countries couldn't visit each other. They can now, but they couldn't for a long time. Um, so it's just there's so much like history and celebration in this story. It's just beautiful. But there's also a tradition, a New Year's Eve tradition that's mentioned that I didn't know anything about. This was always a tradition in Cuba, although grapes are a little more rare there now, so it doesn't happen as much there as it does in American Latina households and Latin America and Spain. On New Year's Eve at midnight, each person eats 12 grapes, each grape representing a month of the year, and they make a wish each time. And I just loved that. I thought, what a wonderful way to kind of acknowledge and celebrate the coming year. So, A Song of Frutas by Margarita Engel.
That's a great tradition. I love that.
I love that too.
I'm going to talk next about The Midnight Fair, written by Gideon Steerer and illustrated by Maria Chiero Di Giorgio. In this book, there are no words. This is a wordless picture book, but don't let that fool you and make you think it's for little kids. In this book, we start with the very first end pages, right when you open the book. We see animals peering out of the forest, watching trucks come into the field, carrying all the things for a summer carnival or fair. The carnival shuts down, and as you might guess, the animals come out of the forest and go into the fair. The details are so beautiful and fun in this one, from the wolf winning a goldfish at one of the fair games, animals on the carnival making cotton candy, and throughout the book, they're paying each of the animal vendors with nuts and pine cones and things like that. Check this one out. It's a fun one, and as I said, the detail is where this story is really at. My 10-year-old daughter picked this one up. I had it at home, and she kept calling me over and saying, "Oh, Mom, did you see this? Did you see this happening?" So this is a great one to share with someone, sit near someone, and enjoy telling the story together since it's wordless.
Well, and the wordless picture books can be so much fun because each reader has their own take on the story. There's different elements and different details that they notice and include into it. So what a fun
story.
I'll have to check that one. The next book I have is called We All Play by Julie Flett. Now, We All Play is a great story for our younger readers. And it really is a celebration of how animals and people all love to play. It celebrates the interconnectedness of nature and of humans. And I'm going to come a little closer here. I love the illustrations, and I love not just the people, but the animals. You can see this little cat over here, how he just seems so content. Each of the pictures, there's so much emotion, and they're so beautifully done. I can't wait to use this with my storytime kids. But one of the other fun things about it is, if you'll notice here under the title, do you see that word? Can you read that? I need a little help pronouncing it. I want to say it correctly. That word here under the title is pronounced Kimetawena, and that is the Cree word for we all play. And throughout the story, there are Cree words. The Cree are an indigenous tribe native to the United States, and there are Cree words that are interwoven into the story. And at the end of the book, there's a page where the author gives the Cree words for the animals that are in the story. And there's even a link to a website about this book where you can click and listen to the pronunciations of some of these words. So you can probably pronounce them better than Miss Julie did now. But I love the story, and I'm definitely hoping to use this one in Storytime this fall.
Oh, I want to too. I'll have to go put it on home. Thanks, Miss Julie. We're going to move from play into work. My next book is called Someone Builds the Dream. And this book is written by Lisa Wheeler and illustrated by Lauren Long. And in this book, each page has someone planning something. Like an architect, it shows someone with a job that does the planning. So an architect is designing a home. And then when you turn the page, it shows the plans the architect designed being used by electricians and plumbers and carpenters and bricklayers and anyone, landscape architects, to take that plan and build that dream. And it goes through the whole book looking at different jobs and how these plans are realized through the hands of many, many workers. Some of them are an engineer designs a bridge, and then it shows everybody building the bridge and how many people it takes and different kinds of specialists. There's an artist that designs a fountain for a park. It's a fun fountain, and he designs it all out of clay and draws it. And then when you turn the page, you see the plumbers bringing the water in for the fountain, getting all the pipes in. You see the people actually doing the concrete work to make this fountain a reality. One of my very favorites is at the end of this book, near the end, one of the very last jobs they look at is this very illustrator and author. They're both writing the book and illustrating the book. And when you turn the page, you see inside of a factory where the book is being printed, bound, boxed up, and shipped off for people like us to read. And when you turn the page, you see teachers reading this book to their class. You see parents reading this book to their children. And so someone builds the dream, and this book talks about the many, many hands it takes to do all of the things that we are lucky to have in our lives.
That's fascinating, because it's true. We don't always realize that if you have an idea, there's a whole journey it goes on. There's a whole journey it goes on.
Totally
Wonderful.
true.
I'll have to check that one out, Miss Lisa.
Excellent. What's next?
My next story was one of my absolute favorite books all summer long. This story is called Was, written and illustrated by Deborah Friedman. Was is a very simple story, but it's talking about how everything is constantly changing. It starts out with a sky that was blue but is now gray. And then what comes next? The rain, of course, right? This story takes us on this journey through the world as it changes little by little by little. Now, I think the last year and a half, with COVID, we're all tired of changing. Just when we think we know what's going to happen, it changes again and it changes again. And I know for me, that's caused a lot of stress and anxiety. And you'd think a book about the world constantly changing would do that, but the beautiful pictures and the calm story I found very relaxing, but also thought-provoking. I think if I were a teacher in elementary school, maybe middle grades, I think I would definitely bring this story in as part of a creative writing or a poetry lesson, because there's so many of those little pieces of change that are constantly going on. If you need to get your creative juices flowing, Was is definitely a good book for you. Check it out.
That sounds super great. I'm going to follow up with what you said about COVID and the past year by talking a little bit about Keeping the City Going, written and illustrated by Brian Flocka, Caldecott Medal winner. This book is beautifully illustrated, and the reason I chose it was actually because of the notes that the author wrote at the end of this book. It's a great book, but at the end, this author illustrator talks about how when New York City basically closed down, everything shut, and he was one of the people that was, in his home, and he did what he normally does, is drawing. And he started looking out his window and drawing the vehicles of the people that were keeping the city going. So all of the hullabaloo and busyness of New York City was gone, but there was still garbage trucks. There were still taxis. There were still buses getting people to and from jobs that were essential workers. There were still trains, all of the things that still were going on, delivery people bringing food to our houses, people bringing groceries to homes. So I'm recommending this one because it was a reminder of how people managed to keep going during a lot of the shutdown were by these essential workers. And Brian Flocka, his book is just filled with illustrations, amazing illustrations of all kinds of vehicles. If you are a person that really likes to look at different kinds of transportation, such a pretty book. He also gives tribute to all of the workers, essential workers, and medical professionals who were helping keep many people safe and healthy during this time. But I liked that this one was one illustrator's look at what came out of the pandemic for him and how he spent his time.
Yeah, everyone has a story. It's really interesting to hear someone else's story about what they were doing during that time.
For sure.
Well, the next story I have is called Gloria's Porridge. It's written by Elizabeth Laird and illustrated by Toby Newsom. Now, this is one of those stories, like what Miss Lisa just showed you, that I enjoyed the story. But then at the end, when I read about the author, I was even more interested in it because the author, Elizabeth Laird, she is well known for tackling a lot of global issues. And back in the 90s, she collected a lot of traditional folk tales from storytellers in Ethiopia. And then the British Council went ahead and made a bunch of books out of those that they were able to share with school children in Ethiopia. And this is one of the stories that came out of that effort called Gloria's Porridge. Now, here's the thing. I heard Gloria's Porridge. The first thing that came to my mind was Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Because how often do you hear stories of porridge, right? Anyway, so can you imagine getting in a huge tizzy over porridge? Well, that's what happened with this girl and her cat, which it's kind of one of those domino stories where they get upset about the porridge, which means someone else gets upset about something and bumps the next person, and they get upset about something else. So we have the donkey, and we have the chicken, and we have the bumblebees, and they all get involved in the story. But the illustrations are so bright and cheerful, and the story is kind of fun and silly and made me chuckle. But if you check out Gloria's Porridge, the fox comes in. And let's see if you can guess how it ends with that fox. You know what? I guessed wrong. It ends completely differently than I expected it to. But I had a lot of fun reading Gloria's Porridge.
I completely hear the word porridge and think of Goldilocks.
Right?
I mean, I'm right there with you.
Right, absolutely.
I need to read this one and shift my porridge thinking.
Okay.
All right, I have another book for you. And this one is called Milo Imagines the World, written by Matt De La Pena and illustrated by Christian Robinson. In this book, we meet Milo, and he is on a train, like a metro, something in a big city, subway maybe, headed somewhere with his big sister. We don't know exactly where he's going, but we get to ride with him on the train as he makes illustrations in his notebook. And what he's illustrating is what he imagines is going on with people. So there's a grumpy man next to him on the train, and Milo makes an illustration of what he thinks happens when that man gets off the train and goes to his apartment. A group of break dancers come onto the train and dance for some money. And when they get off, Milo draws what he thinks happens when they get off, when they go, whatever their stop is. There's a bride on the train. What does her life look like? Well, there's also a little boy about Milo's age that gets on the train. And Milo thinks he looks absolutely perfect. Not a hair out of place. He's wearing a suit. He must have a perfect life. And Milo draws a picture of him riding in a carriage, a horse-drawn carriage, and going to a castle because this other boy's life must be perfect. Until Milo and this little boy get off at the same exact stop. And then they go into the same exact place. And both of the boys, I'm going to tell you the end of this book because this is kind of a tough book. And I think it's a really important book. And both of these boys are going to visit their mothers who are in jail. And what Milo says, I think, is so important. And the most important message, or one of the most important messages in this book, which is maybe you can't really know anyone just by looking at their face. And Milo reimagines all the pictures that he drew on the subway about, like, when he drew the grumpy man, he kind of drew him having a grumpy life. And he thinks, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he has a delightful family he's going home to. This book makes us think about how we judge people based on what we might think about them or what we know. And also, it's just a great book about understanding everyone's life experiences. So check out Milo Imagines the World.
I will second that, Miss Lisa. I really liked that story too. I really liked how Milo allows his mind to be changed. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the art is just beautiful. I think I told you this earlier that Christian Robinson's art is just, it's so inclusive and just beautiful. And he now has a line of stuff at Target with his beautiful art on it, including like pajamas and things, which I think is so wonderful.
I'm going to have to check that out for sure.
Yes.
Okay. I have one more book to share with you.
Excellent.
Called The Little Blue Bridge by Brenda Meyer. Pictures by Sonia Sanchez. Now, The Little Blue Bridge is kind of a modern retelling of the Three Billy Goats Gruff, where the goats are trying to cross the bridge and the mean troll underneath is trying to stop them. Now, Ruby and her brothers want to cross the bridge because across the bridge they can see there are blueberries, and Ruby is quite a baker, so she wants to make a blueberry pie. So she convinces her brothers to cross the bridge with her to gather blueberries to bake the pie. Well, they get to the bridge and they find, instead of a troll there's a bully. So this is the thing. Her brothers each find a way to outsmart that bully and get across the bridge, leaving Ruby behind. So Ruby not only uses her smarts, but she also uses her kindness and compassion to not just outwit the bully, but to understand that if he's being a bully, there must be something else going on. And I think it's such an important idea today that when we look at someone angry or being unkind, that maybe there's something behind it, and that kindness may be even more important than ever. So instead of just being unkind and outsmarting him, she uses kindness to include her in the project. The story is just so much fun. The illustrations are bright and captivating. And I think you will love this new retelling of the Three Billy Goats Gruff in The Little Blue Bridge.
Excellent. All right. So, Miss Julie, I'm going to do some speed book talking now because I have 3 books that I want to talk about. I'm going to ask you, did you have any collections as a kid or collect anything?
Oh, boy. Not a ton, except I'll tell you, my husband and I love to rock hunt, and especially Petoskey Stone hunt up north. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a collector at my house who collects everything. Every time we go on a hike, all of my pockets are filled with acorns and leaves and rocks. So maybe that's why these 3 books really spoke to me. But I have 3 books that came out recently that are all about collectors and collections. So I'm going to speed through these because I want you to know about all of them.
Okay.
All right, here we go. The first one I have is called Daisy, written and illustrated by Jessica Bagley. In this book, we meet Daisy. Looks like Daisy is a cute little warthog here. And Daisy thinks everything is a treasure. A broken teacup, an old stopwatch that doesn't work, little bits of broken glass. Her classmates don't agree with her. They don't think her collection of treasures are anything special. And Daisy walks with her head down and, kind of feels bad about herself until suddenly new treasures start showing up at her fort where she keeps all of her treasures. She doesn't really know where they're coming from until one day she spots another friend, maybe, in her fort, adding a new treasure, saying, "Everything you have here is so wonderful." And Daisy thinks, maybe this is the friend for me, someone who understands my collection. So this is Daisy. The next book is actually called The Collectors. And in this one by Alice Fegan, written and illustrated by Alice, we meet Winslow, who is a fearless finder and can locate any treasure. And her best friend best friend's name is Rosie. And Rosie can identify anything, can label everything, and they have the perfect collection. Except they need one more thing for their tree house collection, and they go out and search for it. And while they're searching, they find a T-Rex skeleton. It's too big. They find a huge gemstone. It's too heavy. They find a piece of gold at the bottom of a lake or stream. It's too deep. Everything they find is too much something. And so they go home and think our collection will never be correct. We'll never complete it until the next day something beautiful happens outside of their treehouse. And they think, maybe our collection's okay. Maybe we're okay right here in our treehouse with all of our lovely things. So this is The Collectors. And the last collection book I have is called Memory Jars. This one is by Vera Brosgol. And in this one, we meet Frida. And Frida is out picking blueberries with her grandma. And they come back to make blueberry jam. And Frida has a memory of eating this with her grandfather. And her grandpa has recently passed away, and she misses him. Her grandma, as they're making this blueberry jam, says, "Oh, we can preserve this in a jar." And Frida's listening, and her grandma says, "Yeah, we'll be able to eat this in January because we will just save this and it will stay in a jar." Well, this is where you have to suspend your belief a little bit and take an imagination trip with Frida, because Frida gets the idea that she's going to save everything she loves in a jar. Everything. Popsicles, rainbows, a full moon, warm cookies, her best friend, even her grandma. Well, she feels quite pleased because now nothing can go away. Everything's preserved, safe in her jars, until she realizes how lonely she is and that she doesn't have anyone to share it with, and her beautiful rainbow and moon and everything are in a jar, but they're not there for her to enjoy. So she lets her grandma back out and some of the things back out. One of my favorite things about this book is at the very end, there's a wonderful illustrated recipe for blueberry jam. And when I read this with my son Theodore, we made the jam at the end, which was totally fun and easy and delicious. So check out the memory jar.
Ooh, I think I will. And I think I'll have to go home and make some blueberry jam.
That's it.
Thanks for sharing all your favorites from the summer with me, Miss Lisa.
You too. This is, we did this last time and I had to go read like 5 more books after I talked to you. So.
I know. Me too. Time to go put some of those on hold.
Yes.
Hey, thank you for joining us, my friends. And we hope to see you again soon, and come visit us at the library.
Yes. Happy reading and have a great fall.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.